It is so cool to talk to you today. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks for talking to me.
I have been watching your shows for years, so it is wonderful to finally get a chance to chat with you.
Thanks, man.
So getting back to a new season, what is it like, especially when I know you've called it the best job ever, which seems highly appropriate.
It's been great. Listen, we had like the entire world, everything stopped, right? And I was just like, is this ever going to happen again? Like the two things I do, travel and eat. It was just like, nope, it can't happen. You can't do this anymore. So when everything started ramping up again, I was like, okay, this is good. All right. Things have changed, right? Like, you got to mask up your testing and all that stuff. But it's been really good to be back in restaurants and back meeting people and talking to chefs and cooking with them and eating their amazing food. And so happy that we've been able to like showcase these restaurants, right? And to give them some love, especially now, right? Like especially to be able to promote restaurants and show them to people from all over the world. Like I'm very happy and I feel very proud about the show.
Well, that was 100% one of my questions, because on the one hand, you've got this great opportunity to talk up restaurants that have been struggling for quite a while. And at the other time, you're also offering a bit of an escape for the people who haven't been out to restaurants or, dreaming of traveling and everything else. Is that a fun space to be in now to offer a bit of both? Because I do see it as a bit of an escape too.
For sure. I mean, I think it's kind of perfect escapism, right? Like there was something, I know that during the lockdowns, the network was showing all our shows just like on repeat, like all the time. And so a bunch of people who had never seen the show, right? They were at work, they were doing stuff. Now we're at home and that's all they can do is watch TV. A bunch of people watch the show and a bunch of restaurants were able to like showcase their stuff. So that's been really cool. And I think people want something that feels safe and comfortable and stuff that they know. And I'm glad that, the shows that I've been part of allow that to happen.
Well, and so your first episode, I mean, I got to say, opening with Mallard Cottage is just like, I've been to St. John's only once. And so now I know I have to go back. I'd heard of Mallard Cottage, but to see this deep dive into how they're making the food and the food they're making and the people there, what was the highlight of being there for you? Have you been there before this?
I had never been there before this. So, I mean, I'd only heard amazing things about Mallard College, about Todd Perrin. But so Kitty Vitty Village is about, it's not that far from St. John's.
Right.
And it's like, you're able to like drive in, it's this fishing village. Like it's picturesque. It's like every postcard you would think of, right? But they've got this like amazing food scene happening there. You've got Mallard Cottage that was an old cottage at some point. And then you have this incredible chef who's there making this just like outrageously delicious food. And when you're driving into the village, like I think you saw the episode you were saying.
Yeah.
So like he's got this pit outside where he's cooking.
It is
all this
amazing
meat, right?
to see how he's cooking in the back.
Yeah, you drive in and you see the smoke and then you smell it before you even get to the cottage, and it's so wild. It's that just seeing like the short rib cooking outside, right, over open flame. That is just beautiful. And then to get inside the cottage and see him making all the other stuff, like when he made his potato pave, which was just, I'd never had that before. And I was just like blown away by it. Like thinly sliced potatoes layered with cheese and cream and then baked. And then that thing gets kind of like seared. And then the short rib gets put on top. And then there's like a chimichurri on there. Like there's no words. That's just ridiculous. Like it's so delicious. Hey, I'm starving. I haven't had lunch yet. I just want you to know.
I was ready.
Just been brought in. Lunch has just been brought in. It's right there. And it's staring at me. Just so you know.
I was ready to book my ticket to Newfoundland the second.
And listen,
the first scenes.
St. John's is amazing, right? Newfoundland is just beautiful. And this is like the first time I really got to do like a deep dive there. I've been there a few times, but to really just soak it all in, right? To just like driving outside the city and going to Portugal Cove and going to Cape Spear and seeing all these beautiful cliffs and the ocean and just people and like it's just, there's something so beautiful and peaceful. And then when you're like in St. John's itself and you're on Signal Hill and you can look down back into the city, like it's just so picturesque. Cause like you turn a corner and you're like, okay, that's beautiful. And then you turn another corner, and you're like, no, stop here. We're taking some more photos here. It was so great. Yeah.
Well, the thing that I love about this is I know that after this pandemic and during it, whatever, people want to travel and get out of the country. But there are so many great places to see in Canada that, like, I mean, I was just in Nova Scotia last fall, and like the food you discover there, and like, yeah, I've been to Newfoundland once, and the food you discover there, and like every place has so many amazing spots. Do you feel a bit like it's like how do you cover all these places?
Well, I mean, you try the best you can. Like, I mean, there's so many amazing restaurants, right? Like there's still so many more stories to be told and so many more dishes to be eaten, right? So I'm looking forward to getting back and going to see these places again and revisiting those places we've been to and then trying out new things, right? Like the East Coast of Canada is unlike any place in the world. And honestly, some of the nicest people I've ever met are from the East Coast. Like one of my favorite stories is like being in like Charlottetown and, like about to cross the street and like cars stopping and like waving you across the street. And we're like, are you, no, go ahead. Like there's no one's beeping horns at you. No one's honking at you because you tried to cross the street. They're like, no, go ahead. It's all right. You're okay. Even if you think about it, cars will stop, even if the thought has crossed your head.
It is an amazing thing. And I mean, so then on the other side, you've got, I mean, so many amazing, I mean, the range of cultures, the range of dishes to try from other cultures. I mean, I love some of the restaurants here in Toronto, obviously, but I mean, across North America that you've seen, what were some of the highlights for you for this season?
Well, even like on the premiere episode, we're in Chicago at a place called Tanta, which is a Peruvian restaurant, right? Which and I didn't know much about Peruvian cuisine. I've had some stuff, but to do like a deeper dive on there to find out like the influences of like Chinese immigrants and Japanese immigrants had on the food scene there is pretty wild, right? Like you have the chifa, which is like Chinese cuisine, and you have the Nikkei, which is the Japanese cuisine, and that has like influenced cuisine, that it influences meals. Like there's one dish that we're doing that it's called the taradito al poña. The taradito is like it's the way that you cut the fish. It's like it's sashimi style, right? So that's where the Japanese vibe comes from, is the way that the fish is cut, and then they it's almost like a ceviche, but sometimes, in ceviche, you cut it just like little cubes and stuff like that. But this is like slices, nice, beautiful sashimi of fish. And they do this, the sauce that it's in, it's called the leche de tigre, the tiger's milk. So it's like tangy and spicy, and that's what cures the fish. So I, again, never had that before in my life. So trying amazing. That sort of stuff, and it looked amazing. And so beautifully plated. This was the season of edible flowers. Everybody's using edible flowers to like plate everything. And it's also the season of foraging, wild foraging. So many of the restaurants we had gone to would just be like, we'd be shooting and there'd be like a knock at the back door and there'd be like some mushroom dude. He's just like, hey, I got mushrooms. He's like, yeah, bring it in. Or fiddleheads or all kinds of different things.
Right.
Like, it's just like, yeah.
Well, and I mean, that speaks to just the amount of stuff that's out there that, to explore. I mean, it is an amazing thing. And Chicago, just speaking of that, wow, like what a food city. I have to say, for people who don't know, so many amazing restaurants.
Amazing restaurants. Also, the architecture there is just so beautiful. Like every time whenever somebody's going to Chicago, I'm like, okay, you got to take that river tour, architecture tour, and you just like you float down the rivers, and then they tell you all about the different architecture. It's like it's a beautiful city. It's got, I mean, it feels kind of like Toronto, but on a grander scale, right?
Yeah,
Like they
for
didn't
sure.
tear down all the beautiful buildings.
Big time.
Yeah.
Where are some of the other cities that you're going to this season?
There's another one we were in. So we were in Toronto, we were in St. John's in Chicago, Montreal we go to, we're in Milwaukee, we're in Wellington, Ontario. We were in Prince Edward County at a place called La Condesa, which was this amazing taco restaurant. And Samantha Valdivia is the chef there. She's originally from Cancun, and now she's opened up this taqueria in Wellington. Yeah, in Wellington. So you've got this, Prince Edward County. You got these wineries. You got all that stuff, and then you've got this awesome little taqueria there. And she does al pastor tacos, but only does them on Tuesdays. So people like line up for these tacos, and she has them on the spit at the bar with the pineapple dripping all this juices all over to the pork. It's slicing it up and putting it on tortillas, and she's hand making the tortillas in the back. Like she's just, when she said she was making hand pressing all the tortillas, I was like, how many tortillas? And she's like, don't ask me. Don't ask how many I've made. I'm like, this is your fault. You did this to yourself. You made them so delicious. So that was great too. Where else? Like we're in Bloomfield, we're in Chicago, we go to Tofino, we're in Boston, we're in Palm Springs. Like we bounce all over the place. And
what did you find in Palm Springs?
Say that again.
What did you find in Palm Springs?
We did this place called Wilma and Frida.
Okay.
And they did they were all like the owner's like grandmother and mother's recipes. So like grilled meatloaf, and it was like a blackberry custard French toast. So really comforting, big like comfort food dishes, right? It's super delicious, all made in house. Really caring about where all the ingredients are coming from and stuff like that. And it was, really delicious. Yeah.
How much of your show is you guys hunting for places, and how much of it is the fact that people must come to you all the time and go, oh my God, you've got to go to this place?
Yeah. I mean, so many people will reach. I mean, part of it, it's very funny, Andrew. It's when you're having a meal. I don't know if you do this, but I know with my family, when I'm having a meal, we're already talking about the next meal or what this meal reminds me of. And I'm going to go, oh, if you've had this, or you love this chicken, you got to do this place over here. So a lot of that, like when we're at restaurants, like when we're shooting at restaurants, we always ask them, we're like, okay, where do we have to hit when we're in town? They're like, I'll go to this place and this, and this. If you want drinks, you go here. If you want a nice a pizza, that's like, yeah, that's also my thing too. When we get into towns, it's always like, okay, find me a good pizza, find me a good plate of pasta.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such a fun idea. Yeah, I mean, you're right that people talk about this kind of stuff even while they're eating a meal. They talk about the next place for sure.
It's just like, what did we eat? What did I eat before this? What am I eating after this? It's just like it's very funny. It always when I realized that happens, I stood back a bit. I was like, oh my, really? This is what's happening right now. It's very funny.
I could, by the same standard, I'd like to see a spinoff of your show that does this with cocktails, because I would watch that. I would then follow along if I could.
It's just two Negroni in, and I'm just like, so how are you? Where are you? What did you say?
You can definitely gorge on more food than you can on cocktails.
Seriously. And then when you're in the States, they free pour, and it's just like a dangerous. Like their cocktails are quite delicious. Yeah, I rediscovered my love of old fashioned while I was there my last trip. So that was nice. But Negroni is my go-to. So if I'm anywhere and then I'm like, okay, is this gonna be a good one? I think so.
It is amazing the spins on old fashions now, because there are so many. I just had one a couple weeks ago that like shocked me that it was such a different spin on the concept. I
had one where they bring the whole glass is brought to the table covered with another big glass, and it's the smoke. They've smoked the whole thing, so when you take off the the cover. It's smoking all over the table, and you're like, all right. Is it worth $20? But all right, we'll see. We'll see about that.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you is, in this discussion about food and obviously the comfort and everything else, where did desserts fit into this conversation? Because it is such a, I'm sure for you guys, it must be difficult to like, when there's so many strong meal things, how do you talk about desserts too?
Well, I guess it depends on the dessert itself, right? Is the dessert itself a bucket list worthy? Is it like, because then it is like we shot at Alouette, right? And we did their lemon meringue pie. And I don't know if you've had it yet, but
I haven't.
That is spectacular, right? Like it's a big piece of pie, and then they pipe the meringue separately on each piece and torch it. So you get that it's mile high, right? And and they use so many eggs in their custard itself, so that it's so bright, and it's tangy, and it's got some sweetness as well. And then it's got that nice graham crackery crust as well. Like, so if it's worthy, I'm eating it for sure, right? I mean, I like, if I'm at a restaurant and they have an apple pie or an apple crumble, that's where I'm at. That's my thing. I don't have too crazy of a sweet tooth, but if there's an apple pie in my house, I can't say no to it. It's very dangerous. The first version of the lockdown, I was making a lot of bread and a lot of pies. so many apple pies. I bought one of those apple peeler cutters. Have you seen those? Like, I felt like I was like a Little House on the Prairie kind of thing. I was just like making pies and calling out the kids, pies ready.
Well, this is the other thing I have to ask you. I will ask you one last thing. So, you've seen so much cooking and all this stuff. So what are you cooking at home? Like, do you cook a lot? Has the show impacted what you're cooking at home?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impacted the stuff I cook. I always gravitate to like pastas, right? Like that's my comfort food, right? I grew up in an Italian household, so a pasta is my love language. So that's, what I mean. I'll always go there. But when I can start grilling stuff, I'll grill stuff on the barbecue. I think this is my 5th or 6th season, growing season. So I've got a really nice garden in the backyard, and there's nothing like vine ripening tomatoes. Just popping one into my mouth, as I'm walking by, and it's still warm from the sun, and just doing that with a bite of a panino. Like, how can you hate that? You can't. But definitely, like, I was like, definitely learn about the fried chicken on the road, and definitely learn about, braising stuff on the road. So that's stuff that I, doing like braising short ribs for hours in the oven, right? Like that sort of stuff that you've kind of like, I was like, oh, I like this idea. I like this. I'm going to use that. And when I have the time, and I love to cook, like I feel like I'm very lazy. So it's just like, I'm going to sit on the couch and we're going to order in some Indian tonight. That's what's happening.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. I did that 2 days ago. It was very delicious.
Well, thank you so much for the time. Really a pleasure to chat. Congratulations on another season of being able to show people this stuff, because it is like mouth-watering just from my couch.
Thanks, Andrew. It was lovely chatting with you, man. I hope everything's well.